Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dressage Instructors Network, Jumping Instructors Network, wherever we're sharing it. We are sharing these shows for you. We started originally, Laura and I started with the Jumping Instructors Network, and we started doing these series because we know so many of our friends in the horse business professionals can't travel, can't do a lot of things. And so we brought forth shows that were educational, that specialized in trainers and judges who are sharing their favorite training exercises so that you, whether you're a professional or just another rider, or would not just another rider, our rider, will be able to improve your skills and take them to the next level. So these are for you. You can show these shows with anybody you like. If you look at the bottom of this comment, this is a Facebook Live, you'll see the share button. You can share that now on your page, your profile, or your favorite group, so we can share it with even more people. And while you're doing it, don't forget to like our love to show us that you care about what we're sharing with you, because we are doing this for you. Tonight, we have a very special guest, and I'll get more into her. But first, I'd like to introduce my co-producer, and that's Laura Kellen May.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Do you want to tell everybody about yourself, Laura?
Oh, sure. I help people improve their riding and training. I'm a competition coach specialist, high performance trained, and I'm an Equestrian Canada senior judge, 100 jumper equitation and hack, and a senior steward too. And I produce these live equestrian related videos on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and learn what Susan's going to share with us today.
I know it's going to be so exciting. You're also a specialized instructor through Canada. What's that certification you have?
Yeah, competition coach specialist. Yep.
Competition coach specialist. My name is Randy Thompson, and many of you know me. I'm the founder of the Jumping Instructors Network, Dressage Instructors Network, Ladies Horse Society, Horse and Rider Awareness. It goes on and on. As part of my journey, I got into social media, and it's taken off like wildfire because I found that I can give by connecting with people like you. And my specialty during this time is doing social media and being a horse expert witness and legal consultant. Our special guest tonight is Susan Harris. Now, I know, yay, Susan. She doesn't really need an introduction because most of us know her or what she's about. She's a renowned horse person, artist, riding instructor, and international clinician who conducts centered riding clinics and anatomy and motion demonstrations. She's the author and illustrator of Horse Gaits, Balance and Movement, Horsemanship in Pictures, Grooming to Win, the U.S. Pony Club Manuals of Horsemanship. Do you remember when they redid this, when they used to be the British version? It was Susan that redid those again. She apprenticed with Sally Swift, the founder of Centered Riding. So we'll learn more about her. But before we do, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how Centered Riding has changed my life in the horse business. So I learned about centered riding first. The book, Sally Swift's book came out, and it was 1979. I know I'm aging myself there, but we didn't have computers or anything at that time. And I was actually attending the Meredith Manor International School of Horsemanship, and I came across this book called Centered Riding, and it was revolutionary because nobody at that time was teaching balanced riding or the concepts that the biomechanics. It was the introduction to the biomechanics. So I actually met Sally Swift as a part of the United States Dressage Federation instructor programs with Violet Hopkins. So she would come in here and do that thing, and she changed the way that I walked. And then as part of that, the other things that had a profound change in how I was teaching as a professional in the business was learning, when I first heard this concept of centering, I was like saying, what? And then I tried it myself, and it was profound, the change it made in me. And then I had the ability to share that knowledge with the people I was working with, the riders. And then, of course, the one thing that's really affected me too, besides the breathing, because along my journey, I learned I'd been riding horses all my life, all over in Minnesota, bareback and stuff, had no fears or anything. But when I cantered in a ring, I would get a stitch in my side. And Sally taught me that it was because I wasn't breathing correctly. And then add to that the other concept that made a great, and we're going over these concepts tonight. They're the basics everybody should have. The other concept was turning from the center. I had never even thought of anything like that before. It, as I said, it has changed everything that I'm doing. But along my journey, I was speaking at the U.S. Pony Club National Conference, and Susan was one of the co-speakers there. That's where we actually met in person. And she was so amazing to watch. You know, she loved the people so much. The fans loved her. She would take her time. She'd be autographing one of her many books, like the U.S. Pony Club books, and she would draw each person a separate little horse. And what I saw was that somebody who had reached this level, even then, she was internationally renowned. She had reached the level of that, and she still took the time to let the people around her know that they were important. So I'm so excited that Susan is here to share with us the basic concept we're talking about. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Susan?
Oh, I just wish Sally Swift was here, but I think somewhere Sally Swift must be smiling.
Yeah, she had a profound change in many of our lives, that's for sure. All right,
Susan, before we go on, could you just give us a few words on Sally? Just a short little intro about who she was and what she did.
Sally was an amazing lady. One reason that she developed what she came to call centered riding was because she had a disability. She had a severely crooked spine, scoliosis, and if you saw her walk, you would think, oh my gosh, that lady's crooked. And they think she might have had polio as a small child and nobody knew. And in that day, back in the 1920s, she was in danger of having a spinal fusion and ending up in a wheelchair. But her parents were very forward thinking. They sent her to Mabel Todd, who was a pioneering physical therapist. And Mabel Todd taught her all about anatomy, much more than most 11-year-old girls ever learn, and also about using mental images. She wouldn't say just stand up straight. She would say, walk like you have a sky hook from your head to the clouds, or walk like you're dragging an alligator tail on the ground. And Sally used these mental images and her knowledge of anatomy, and much later the Alexander technique, and what she learned from Tai Chi. And that all got mixed together and came out as centered riding, which is kind of about how your mind affects your body and how your mind and your body connect with your horse.
It's revolutionary. She changed the horse industry, and then, you know, Susan is her apprentice. She's continued to carry those topics, the concepts along, and even gone further with them. So we have so many topics that we're going to share with you tonight. I think you've seen them, most of them that we had listed on the show post itself. Let's start out with something a lot of people don't think about, especially those of us who have been teaching for a while. Unless, like I said, all of a sudden I discovered that I was getting a stitch in my side because I wasn't breathing at the canter, which made no sense. But she was on. She was right. So let's go first on to breathing as an aid. What would you like to say about that?
Well, everybody breathes, but a lot of the time we aren't aware when we inhibit our breathing. If you get surprised, tense, tight, nervous, or just frustrated, you tend to breathe high and tight up in the top of your chest. And that, by the way, as we get older, we tend to do that all the time anyway. And if you breathe high and tight up in your chest, you're not using your whole body, you're not getting as much oxygen, and that can result in the stitch in the side. We also do that when we're trying too hard. So if you've ever been, let's say, in an equitation class and the instructor or the judge had a sadistic streak and made you trot without stirrups, post without stirrups for a long time, you know how after a while it feels like you're getting a pitchfork stuck in your ribs? That's because you're breathing inefficiently.
Which is what I
breathe, but we've got to learn to breathe using the whole apparatus. So if you look at the diagram there, you can see there is a brown thing that looks a little like a mushroom up under the lungs, and that is your diaphragm. And the diaphragm's a big muscle. When you breathe in, it tightens and it pulls down, creates more room in your lungs, and the air rushes in. And when you breathe out, it relaxes back up into place and it pushes on the bottom of your lungs and out goes the air. Now, the fibers of the diaphragm at the bottom, like the stem of the mushroom, connect with the front of your spine. And if you can see the two red areas there, those are your psoas muscles. Those are the deepest core muscles you have. And when you breathe using your diaphragm, as we normally do when we're relaxed and athletic and just using our body well, but if you use your diaphragm, it affects your posture. So you can literally breathe yourself taller. And it also helps you get rid of excess tension. You can breathe away tension, let's say in your lower back or wherever you carry your tension. And horses really react to breathing because if you
Susan,
keep
you
your breath
said
on horses, they got you.
you can
Yeah.
breathe your way to better posture. How do you do that?
If you, when you breathe for better posture, sorry, I have to shut that off. There. When you breathe for better posture, sorry, I've got to shut my.
Just
Technical.
don't touch your phone, Susan. Just don't touch your
It's got to
phone.
go away.
We never.
And we're live.
Shut off.
Everybody
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I killed it. All right. So back to
you
for
said
better
that you could
posture,
breathe yourself to better posture.
if you
And
take
how would
a
you do?
long, deep breath in through your nose, and as you exhale, it feels like the air could flow down through your body and into your center or into your pelvis. That's going to involve your psoas muscles. And we don't have a lot of nerves in the psoas muscles, so it's hard to feel them and it's hard to control them. But if you breathe with a big, nice, long, easy breath that goes down the middle, your
and you
psoas
can
muscles
feel
wake
it
up.
in your belly
Those
when
help
you do that,
posture.
right? That's what Sally had
Right.
shown me was you'll feel it in your belly. I put my hands on my belly and I can feel when my breath, I should be breathing through my belly. And my tendency was to breathe through my chest.
Yes. And belly breathing is what we call yoga breathing.
Mhm.
So if you do yoga, you will definitely learn a lot about breathing into your belly like you're filling a flask. We also use techniques borrowed from Pilates, where when you breathe out, your belly wall goes inward a little bit, and that wakes up your core muscles, and that can put strength into your inner seat, your core, and your aids.
Well, can you
So
share
I'll
some of
just
your
get
breathing
to some of the
exercises you have to
specifics.
share with us that people can use for themselves or with their riders?
Yes, yes. Let's look at some of the next. Let's look at the next artwork if we can, please, and we'll give you a specific one. This illustrates what I call breathing down.
So everybody
And
knows Susan created these illustrations herself.
well, it's easier if you can see them. If I do the hard part and write the words, I get to do the fun stuff and draw the pictures.
And for those
So,
one other thing, for those of you who are watching, if you would like to see the images closer, make the screen bigger. If you look at the bottom right of your screen or your mouse there, you'll see a little box. Click on that and your screen will become a giant sized screen where you can see everything clearer. Go ahead, Susan. Thank you.
awesome. Okay, breathing down is the first thing I like to teach to anybody in a centered riding lesson or a brand new rider who is just sitting on a horse for the first time, because it helps your balance and it helps relax the muscles that often tighten up in your seat and your thighs and your legs. And horses feel those and react to those right away. So if you feel like you are, quote, breathing down, your horse will go, oh, thank you. And your body feels safe. So to do that, you breathe in. And as you exhale, it feels like you go, and send that air down into your seat. Now, we know the air really goes out your nose. That's why you have to wear a mask for COVID, right? But if it feels like it goes down into your seat, you'll feel your seat deepen and relax. You'll feel your inner thighs relax around the horse, and you feel like you're down in the horse instead of sitting up on top of him. And when you do that, that also helps your posture and your balance, and it helps you get centered. So you get a lot of bonuses just for that one breathing down.
So it's not pushing the air out of your mouth down towards the horse. Then it's thinking that the air is coming down into your seat.
You can try it right where you're sitting at your computer. You breathe in. As you breathe out, just mentally imagine that the air actually flows down through the bottom of your lungs all the way down into your seat bones and swirls around in your pelvis. Now, we know it can't actually do that. But when it feels like it does, you are, quote, breathing down. And we know the air actually does go out your nose or your mouth. But think, And you can feel relaxation travel all the way down. And we use this for halting a horse. We use it for calming a horse down. And I use it all the time for calming down nervous riders.
Yes.
So, and you actually say to them, when you exhale, think of the air, your breath coming down into your seat.
It's as though your air could go down into your seat. Now, we know it really can't because we know where your lungs are, but it feels like it does. So you can try it right where you're sitting in the audience too. If you are sitting up moderately straight, not lounging back on the couch, and you just go, breathe in, and as you breathe out and down, you may feel a wave of relaxation travel right down the middle of you and into your seat. And if you're sitting on a horse, or if you're a friend of mine likes to watch TV sitting on a saddle, but if you're sitting on a horse or a saddle, you'll feel everything releases down around, and you feel like you have gone down deep inside, and that's really important.
And what
So
you
I
said
teach
is
this
so
to
important.
beginners and horses.
What you said is so important, Susan, because the horses, well, for the more, maybe not so much with the beginner riders, but with the more upper level riders, they can sense as soon as we connect with them by taking that breath. They can feel when we relax, it teaches them to relax. Now, you also had more illustrations that talk into how we can use that for the transition too, right?
Breathing down from trot to walk. Now, before I do the next one, I would teach what I call breathing halts. But let's look at the next illustration, number 3, which is breathing down from a trot to a walk. Now, if you were walking your horse like the left-hand person, and you breathe down, you breathe in through your nose, you go down into your seat, and in the next heartbeat or two, you pick up your reins, say whoa, and stop your horse. And as soon as the front feet stop, you relax your reins and pet him. It doesn't take long for horses to connect this. I have seen smart horses who would get this in about 4 or 5 repetitions, and sometimes quicker.
Yes.
So eventually your horse starts, as he feels you breathe down or breathe out like that, he begins to halt with no reins.
Right.
Boy, that's a lovely thing on a nervous horse.
Teaching a horse how to ride from your seat and legs more than just from the rein connection.
And use your reins to explain to the horse, yes, that means stop. But you use your reins clearly but gently, and you always give him a chance to start stopping before you pick up your reins. And very quickly, he will start stopping. Don't make a big fuss about whether he stands still, because he's getting rewarded for paying attention to your breathing and beginning to stop. It's not how long he stands still. And with practice, he'll stand still longer and longer. I have a wild story about a lady who had learned to breathe down. She had a very hot, nervous endurance Arabian. She moved up to Alaska, and the place you had to go to find the best trails was right out on the railroad tracks for a mile or so. And then the trails broke off and you could ride forever. Well, they told her you have to stay right on the rail bed because there's barbed wire and quicksand. So she's riding along on the rail bed, and the train came.
Oh, geez.
And she thought about racing it back to town, but she was afraid she'd lose the race. So she pulled her horse as far off the train tracks as she could, which was not very far because of the barbed wire and the quicksand. And she breathed down, and she breathed. And she said the train bore down on them, shined the light in their eyes, honked the air horn at them, and buffeted them with gravel as it went past. And she could feel her horse's heart knocking against each of her knees. And as long as she breathed, that horse stood still. So she said she thought breathing might have saved their lives. And she said she did get off and throw up. And that she learned not to ride on active train tracks. But think about the power of breathing. If you have taught your horse when it's not an emergency that means calm down, I've got it. Boy, that can save your bacon when you really need it to.
Yes.
Now so this
breathing halt.
Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to ask if this second rider here, this one here in the middle, this is the what you taught us in the first slide.
Yes, this is the breathing down technique where as you breathe out, it feels like The air goes down into your seat.
Okay.
There's a different technique we'll come to in a minute, and you want to think of the breathe down so that your horse, when it's not an emergency, your horse recognizes that way of breathing as that means calm down and prepare to halt. Now, in this particular illustration, this is actually sort of part two. Once your horse has learned about breathing halts, you can ride at a posting trot. On any sit down, you breathe down as if you were going to halt as you sit, and the horse will usually come to a beautifully smooth transition into walk, often with no reins at all or just minimal touch on the rein. But they have to have learned breathing down from a halt or from a walk to a halt before you can ask them to do it from trot to walk. And this becomes a part of a half halt. Let's look at the next one if we could, because I know we've got a lot of diagrams to go through here. This is breathing for forward. And I teach this one from a halt too. And this is often good for horses that need to pay a little more attention to you. My own horse can be very, very good at ignoring people he thinks don't sufficiently interest him. So this is good for him. So if you wanted to breathe to go forward, think of blowing out like you are blowing out a match or blowing out a candle. You're breathing more like than ah. And you do that a heartbeat before you use your legs and say, yes, that means go forward. So you could do this from a halt into a walk. This rider's doing it from a walk into a trot. So you breathe forward with some energy like you're blowing the match out, and use your legs. And of course, make sure that your body goes with him and the horse goes forward in trot. So he can learn a different kind of breath that means pick up your energy and go forward. I think about the wind blowing a sailboat forward, or maybe the power of a steam engine where they go chug, you know. But breathing for forward is like blowing out. Breathing for down is like sighing and relaxing.
And the horses can feel the difference between those two breaths.
Oh, they are incredibly sensitive, and they will, especially if you're clear. When you do the breathing down, you use your reins and your body balance to say, yes, that's right, that means halt. And when you do the breathing forward, then in the next heartbeat, you use your legs. And if you have a really lazy horse, you could tap him with a crop to say, yes, that means forward. And it doesn't take them long to connect that breathing with what you want them to get from it. So how about if we look at the next one? This is a power breath. And the power breath is good for when you need energy. Now, the first kind of breathing I always teach is breathing for relaxation, because you've got to have the rider deep down in the horse and connected with the horse before anything good happens. But sometimes we need energy too. And in a power breath, you are breathing using your diaphragm, you're using your core muscles, and you give them a great big, almost like a hissing breath that goes like a steam engine starting up. And in the beginning, you have to go ahead and make the silly steam engine noise. As you get better at it, I can do a silent power breath, but I've been doing this for years and years. So go ahead and make the noise. And if you are sitting and want to try a power breath on your computer chair, put one hand with your thumb at your belly button and your hand below it on your abdomen. You can even put your other hand behind it on your lower back. And as you go, when you feel your belly muscles kick in, it wakes up your core. And it feels like that air is just going, wow, powerfully forward out of your chest, like in the illustration. So you could use a power breath to wake up the lazy horse who has grown roots into the ground and doesn't want to move. You can also use it when you want something dynamic, like a medium trot or an extension, or you need to ask the horse to give you the energy, power, and impulsion. But you have to play with that power breath first. And it's a good thing to try it on the ground without a horse before you try it on the horse. You can also reinforce that power breath with a little tap with your stick, a little squeeze of your leg that says, yes, that means forward. But it's a good thing if you have taught him about breathing forward the normal way first, And then the power breath is a really powerful version of that.
So that there's three, and it engages your core in different ways. Is that what the?
It does. It does. And you'll engage your core the most powerfully with what we call the power breath. And when you breathe out powerfully for the power breath, you will feel your belly wall goes back in towards your spine. You don't grab it and hold it because that would tighten you up and then you couldn't ride. But you'll feel as you exhale, the front of your belly goes back for just a moment, and that's your core kicking in. That's your core saying yes in a really powerful way. If you have your hand at the back of your lower back, you might feel like your lower back muscles almost fill up. They can't really fill up with air, but you may feel like those muscles get thicker. And that's because the way you're using your diaphragm and the interconnected muscles that connect with the roots of the diaphragm are changing they're minutely changing your posture, changing the way you use your muscles, and putting more power into your whole torso. And horses really do feel it.
Okay, before we go on, just a second, I want to read a couple comments here. Christina Pond says, "Thank you, Susan." Thank you, Christina, very much for putting the comments in. Back in the early 80s, your teachings helped me through life, not just horses.
Oh my goodness. Well, hello, Christina. Nice to see you again. And I always felt that way about Sally Swift's teaching to me. So from Sally Swift through me to you, and I hope you could pass it on too. Thanks.
And Ginger Long, thank you, Ginger. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Susan. We appreciate you. Yes, thank you so much.
Hello, Ginger. I appreciate you coming and listening and commenting.
Okay, so let's move on then to the next topic, which is how to become centered in a saddle.
Centering, and yep, and let's look at the diagram for that. Centering you could call internal balance control. It isn't something you do with your great big outer muscles like your biceps and your thigh muscles and your back muscles. It's inside. So if you could imagine that you have a center of balance, it's sort of like center of gravity. Ask any engineer and they'll tell you center of gravity is real important. And in humans, when we're sitting upright, that is somewhere below and behind your belly button, but it can shift around a little depending on how you're sitting or standing. So your center can come up a little higher, it can go more forward, it can go a little more backward, but it's still in that general vicinity. So if you imagine your center as some kind of a ball, you put your thumb at your belly button and your hand below it, and maybe the other hand on your back like this rider has. You can shift your center by breathing. And I always do it, for me anyway, it has to be breathing out, but if you find it's a different way, that might be you. But try breathing out and think about sending that balance point backwards. So you sort of breathe out and send it back. And then you could breathe out and send it forward. And then send it back again. And at some point, it'll find the perfect spot in you, and you may feel like something inside you goes down. It might feel a little bit like you're a tall building and the elevator goes down to the basement, or it might feel like that ball drops, but it has to find the right spot. And when it does, you feel like, whoa, inside me went down. It doesn't mean you get all squishy. Somebody doesn't put their hand on their head and squish you down. Your body stays tall, but inside your balance sinks down. Can anybody feel that happen when you're sitting in your computer chair?
Well, I'm doing it. I don't know what everybody else in the world is doing. If you're doing this exercise along with us, to put it in the comments, let us know what you're doing. I'm trying to feel it, but I'm trying not to slouch and round and sink back into my chair either.
And it's also
if you're slouching and rounding, it's really hard to find your center. So you kind of have to be sitting up.
Susan, do you agree this is also the basics for a good half halt to get that feeling of
yes. You have to have centered. I think you have to be centered in order to use your body properly in a half halt.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is have you just say, oh my gosh, that feels different, and find your internal balance point. And you can shift that balance point around by how you breathe and also how you use your body. For instance, if you hold your breath or pull your shoulders up by your ears like you're really scared, your center goes up. And if you breathe out and go, let it drop, you may feel like it drops down again. And sometimes you can tell better by comparing the wrong stuff with the right stuff. So if you hold your breath, cross your eyes, tighten your shoulders, you feel like, oh, I don't think I have a center. And if you go, let it drop down, you may feel very different. And often people are looking for a great big change, and the change is kind of a little subtle one.
So on this diagram here, there's a red dot where the person's ear is. What's that represent?
That represents the top bone of your skull, and where your skull sits on the atlas or C1, which is the top bone of your neck. And if your head was way out in front of you like a buzzard, it would be very hard to center because that affects the whole balance of your body. Or if you were looking down and you have your chin tucked down like a horse in draw reins, that's going to affect the balance of your body. So that sort of, you could almost say your head has a center too, but the real center is the one down in your pelvis.
Okay, excellent. Really good. I love these diagrams, Susan. They're so clear, but they're simple. They're simple enough for everybody to understand, but they're in depth enough that you can really see everything and really understand everything.
Well, thank you. I'm glad if that's working for you. That's what I always hope. And I'm really glad when it does work. Should we look at the following seat? Okay. Yeah. This was one of Sally Swift's favorite exercises. And she said she wanted people to teach the basics, which is breathing and soft eyes and centering and balance. But she said, you need to teach walk in the following seat. And she also wanted us to teach a particular trot exercise. And she said, and then you can teach anything else you want to. But this one, we usually ask the rider to close their eyes. Now, this rider has her hand up because that's a later version in the exercise where we practice turning, and we'll have them put the hand up on the side they think they're turning to. But when you start out, you can hold onto the front of your saddle if you want, but you need to let your reins be loose. You need a good leader, and the leader can't do anything surprising like bump you into another horse. And the horse is allowed to put his head up or down and within reason to walk faster or walk slower. He's not allowed to totally stop, and he's not allowed to run away, because little changes in the horse give you some feedback. So the first thing is you have to get used to the weird feeling of riding with your eyes closed. And this puts the rider into pure feel because somebody else is leading the horse. You don't have any control to worry about. You can just sit there and go into pure feel. And most of us don't have that luxury most of the time we're riding. So while you go into pure feel, breathing helps because that keeps you relaxed and feeling. And the instructor should ask you things like, can you feel your seat bones moving? Can you feel the horse move your seat bones? How does he move them? Can you feel forward and back? You feel a little up and down? Is there a little left and right? And as you explore that, people find there's way more motion in their body than we're usually aware of when we're riding. This is good motion because this comes from the horse swinging his hind legs, moving his hips, moving through his back, moving his shoulders. And all of this goes through the horse's back and through the saddle and moves our body. And if you were tight and tense and your body couldn't move, you would be like a gingerbread cookie who's been baked too long in the oven.
Right.
And if we picture the saddle with giant dogs, you would be in the same position. And if we dropped the person on the floor, he would shatter and the dogs would eat him up. So we want to have somebody not be a cookie cutter rider, but let that motion go through your joints. And it's okay if it feels sloppy because your eyes are closed and you can't see if it looks sloppy. And this is going to sound really strange, but the more free you get, the less sloppy you look. You're
So how does
blending with
that
the
affect
horse's movement.
for the instructors who are teaching, because a big issue for dressage instructors is how to teach their riders how to follow the seat for the extension, and the
Yes.
same with the hunter jumper riders or whatever. So how does this apply to techniques that they can use to improve their skills or their riders for the
Well,
big
I think
gates?
this is a foundation exercise. People need to realize at a walk, my gosh, that horse moves me. And then I will ask people, how many places in your body can you find? And the hint is check joints, that your horse creates motion. And you'll find he moves your shoulders, he moves your elbows, he moves your head on your neck, he moves your knees, your ankles, your seat bones, your tailbones, many other places. And the better you breathe and the more supple you become, the more that motion flows through your joints. And somebody watching you, you look like you're part of that horse. If you were the cookie cutter rider, you would be bouncing and wiggling and not with the horse. So this is the first way you learn how to go with the horse. And you have to learn it in the walk because there's no spring, there's no suspension, but there's a lot of motion. Then once you've learned it in the walk, you can gradually work on not too big a trot, but learning how to sit the trot and allow that motion to go through your body and trot. That's a bigger challenge. And it's important that the horse is able to trot with his back up and round, not hollow, because that gives you a trot that you can sit. And then you can also work on letting your seat follow in the canter. And of course, the trot and the canter have different movement patterns than the walk, but you learned it in the walk. And if you run into trouble, go back to the walk to regain your balance and freedom and following seat.
We do have a few comments here.
Yeah.
Susan, can we show them?
Oh, yes, please.
Ginger says, flop till you flop less.
I like that. And when it feels floppy, if somebody was videoing you, you'll be surprised that you don't look as floppy as you feel. So it's better to be too loosey-goosey than too tight and polite.
Tight and polite. Okay, Kate, thank you very much, Kate. Ginger, thank you for your comment. And we have Kate here. I tried the breathing for centered riding and I felt deeper in my seat bones, yet it kept my lower back relaxed. Previously, when I tried to stretch up and open my chest, it tightens my lower back, which affects my horse's gait. Thank you. Can't wait to try this with my horse.
Oh, cool. I hope you've got somebody who can lead your horse. It's a great luxury to be led and go into feel. And this is not just for beginners. When I was an apprentice with Sally Swift, I got to lead Lendon Gray's Olympic horse Medallion, while Lendon Gray did the leading with the eyes closed following seat lesson with Sally Swift. I thought I was going to faint from all that, famousness. And Sally said that she had never seen anybody get it quicker or get more out of that exercise than Lendon Gray. And she was just back from the Olympics. So this is not just a beginner exercise, it's a discovery exercise.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing when like you say, I like where you say it's a real jeepers, I can't remember the word you said, luxury. It's a real luxury to have somebody lead you so you can go into that feel mode.
I also, for safety, I'm going to warn you, no matter how kind your horse is, please don't do this at home with no leader. I learned this the hard way because I had the big, sweet, old, kind Appaloosa that I could trust with my life. And I was riding along in the indoor ring with my eyes closed, thinking I was so centered. And I felt this weird, humpy upward step. And I opened my eyes. And Colors was walking over a 2.5 foot jump, 1 foot at a time.
Did he make it?
He did. But it really surprised me because thank God he didn't decide to jump it.
That's great muscle development.
Now,
one more.
What do you think about adding the lunge line as part of this? Because that's another way a rider can explore the possibilities of their performance.
You can certainly try no eyes on the lunge line. The thing about having your eyes closed is if you need to, your eyes will fly open whenever they need to.
Right.
And if you once in a while will run into somebody who gets almost feeling seasick, because your eyes and the horizon are part of your balance and they connect with your inner ear. So if you get a weird feeling like you go, oh, I feel a little funny here, just open your eyes, breathe, and relax your eyes. And if you ride with relaxed eyes, that will work almost as well as closed eyes, particularly if you get a little woozy.
Christina, thank you so much for the comment. Muscle memory makes this possible even after 20 years of not riding.
Ooh, you got good muscle memories, Christina. Great.
Right.
And Karen, thank you, Karen, for taking the time to put a comment in. This is all so great. Thank you. You're welcome.
Wonderful.
And Christina, watercolors, great horse.
Oh, that was a long time ago, but he was a great one. Can you see how this would help a rider discover some of the movements that happen in the bigger, faster gaits where you couldn't close your eyes? So if you don't get it, go back to the slow motion lab of the walk. And often that will help you go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize my shoulders are tight. I got to let them go. Or I'm pinching with my knees or something like that. And there are many things you can explore that way. How about if
okay, so let's move on to the next slide here, which is comparative anatomy.
This is, I think, one of the real key concepts in centered riding, that whatever you do whatever the rider does in their body, the horse will match it. He will reflect it back to you in the same part of his body. So what we have here is a human skeleton and a horse skeleton. And you notice that the bones are colored the same colors. So while the human's vertical, you can see his skull is light blue and the horse's skull is light blue, and the pelvis matches and the thigh bones and all those things. So it's important that we learn to feel what goes on in our body and to check with the horse. Now, the way I use this myself is if I go out and ride my current horse, Max, I will ride him along and I will check what I feel in his body. Like, okay, Max, your hind legs aren't really swinging much today. What's the matter with those? And then I check my own hip joints and thighs. And very often I'll say, oh, I'm sorry, Max, I was holding a little too tight, wasn't I? And as soon as I free up my thighs and hip joints, his hind legs reach farther. Or let's say a horse is hollow in the back. We've got to check the rider's back. If the rider has a hollow back, that isn't going to fix the horse until the rider gets rid of the excess tension and hollow in their own back. So if we can check out any part of your horse that you think could improve a little, this applies to things like maybe you feel like your horse is leaning on his left shoulder. Check your own left shoulder and your balance. Are you maybe tilted a little bit? So every time you find something that needs an improvement in the horse, you go back to yourself and try to release or balance or let that part improve slightly, and then see how that worked for the horse.
So if you have the green for the horse's scapula, horse's shoulder, and
Yes.
so then you same here is
shoulder
here.
blade down the back is same color, and I hope I've got it right that all the corresponding bones match. We're vertical and they're horizontal, but they really feel what goes on in our body. They are so much better at feel than humans are, and they react.
And if you hold your breath, will the horse hold its breath too?
He will certainly react. He might not hold his breath, although I've seen horses do it. But he will. Some horses will stop dead. Some horses will get nervous and go, "Oh my God, tension!
Something's
Where's
happening."
the monster?
Yeah,
what's happening? And horses will certainly react, but they'll react in their own way. Peggy Brown is my partner in Anatomy in Motion. She is the visible rider. In fact, this drawing came from a photo of Peggy. She rides in the bone suit, showing how the rider's body works. And when Peggy gets on and does a demo, this is usually a horse she has never met before in front of hundreds of people. And she will do the wrong stuff as well as the right stuff. So she'll do things like hold her breath, or grip with her thighs and knees, or hollow her back. And when she does it, usually the horse gets a mulish expression on their face and slows right down and sometimes stops dead, like, I can't move when you ride me like that, lady.
Oh, it looks like we have a question from Karen. Thank you very much, Karen, for this question. Are there suggestions for how to release your shoulder when your horse is leaning on his shoulder?
Okay, I would say first check balance side to side of your whole torso. Because if he's leaning in, let's say you're going tracking to the left and he's leaning in on the left shoulder, we want to be sure that you're not tilting a little bit to the left, which can certainly cause that, or even if it doesn't cause it, it goes along with it. So it's like he thinks it's the right thing to do. So the first thing is check your balance and make sure that your weight's equal on both seat bones and that you are in a nice neutral upright balance. And then if you feel like your shoulder's stiff, you could say, do this with both shoulders. If you bring your shoulder blades up towards your ears, roll them back, breathe out and release them down the back. That releases a lot of the tight muscles at the front of your chest. And that helps your shoulders drop down into the position where they work best. And you can do that again, sitting in your computer chair. Just bring your shoulders up to your ears. Breathe in, roll them back, exhale and let them fall. And then do it one more time. And this time you want to bend your elbows like you were holding reins so that you have imaginary reins in your left and right hand. Shoulders up, roll back, drop them down. Does the bottom of your elbow feel heavy? If it does, you really did it right. And that helps.
Totally relaxed.
Yep. And that's one you can do even when you're riding with reins. There are other shoulder releases, and some of them take a trained person to hold your arm in a certain way and help you release. But this is one you can do yourself.
Excellent. So I hope that helps you out. Who was it that asked that? Karen, I hope that helped you out. And thank you so much for the question. Really appreciate it. So now we're going to move on to our next topic. And it's jeepers. The time just seems to go by like that. It always amazes me.
I think we're going to come out right, though, because we've got 2 more illustrations and we're at the last topic.
So it's all about the turns. Turning from the center helps the horse stay vertical in a turn.
Oh, the horse who is happily shying or turning fast, that's the way horses turn when they are galloping around in the pasture the way they please. And they often will lean into a turn and they often will break into a turn shoulder first. This doesn't bother the horse in the pasture. It bothers the heck out of the rider if there's a rider on top, doesn't it? So a riding horse has to learn how to do what we call stand up. He has to learn how to keep his body vertical, not leaning when there's a rider on his back. And they don't practice that out in the pasture. So we have to teach them. And a lot of that is if you are centered and your center is in the middle and your body is well balanced, it's much easier for your horse to learn to keep his center in the center instead of falling out one shoulder or leaning over. Now, one way we do this is by turning in the center. So if you, maybe we can zoom in on the rider on the gray horse there. Can we zoom in on him a little bit?
That's as much as I can do, Susan.
Okay, that's all right, without losing his feet. You can see I've got a vertical line up through the horse and the rider, and both the horse and the rider kind of look like they're turning around that vertical line. And that depends on first you being centered. And by the way, for hunter seat riders, this is easier to learn if you ride a little dressage and you are riding a little more upright than you might if you were cantering to a jump. Try that first, and then you can learn how to apply it as you go with some practice when you're more forward. But it's harder to learn this turning from the center if you are riding with your upper body tilted forward, even though you're supposed to do that over a jump. So do a little dressage style riding to learn it, and then you can learn how to apply it in other seats. So notice that the rider's rotating. What many riders do when they turn is they tilt. And of course, that asks the horse to tip. So if you feel like the weight is equal on both seat bones and you are rotating in the center, just imagine that you have a laser beam shooting out of your center. Let's look at the next picture, by the way, because that's got some images for turning.
Okay.
if you had a laser beam shooting out of your belt buckle and you turn your belt buckle or you turn your center, which is really behind your belt buckle, if we can go in on the left-hand rider there, you can see that rider has
I'm trying to, Susan. It's just not going very deep, big enough.
That's fine. You're great. That's fine. So you notice that that rider is turning around the center, and then we also have one from the top where the rider's body's rotating. And when you were riding your horse, if you had a laser beam shining out of your center, you only need to rotate it a little, just about as far as your horse's inside ear. If you make a great big twist and crank, your body starts to lean, things start to lock up, you get stiff, and you lose all the good effect of turning. So it's better to make many little rotations. And I tell little beginner riders, or all riders, steer with your belly button. If you say that to little kids, they laugh because they think belly button's funny, but they remember it. So if you steer with your belly button, that's very different than leaning over and pulling with your hand. Now, Sally Swift used an image of the barber pole, and I had to draw a barber pole for you because most people have never seen a barber pole these days, unless you're really into antiques or things like American Pickers or the Antique Roadshow. But the barber pole had red and blue stripes and white stripes, and it went around and around and around inside that cylinder. So it was always rotating. And if you like the idea of having a barber pole inside you that just rotates from your seat bones up through the top of your head, around and around, it'll kind of give you that vertical feeling. And it doesn't mean that you twist your center that far, but you might like the idea that it's doing that. And because most people haven't seen barber poles, if you think of a stick of candy with the, we're coming into Christmas now, think of a candy cane, but without the hook on the top. That's an easier one for a lot of people to think of. And that helps people think of the verticality when they turn instead of leaning over.
So I have a question regarding the laser beam. Is it your shoulders and your hips that are moving, or your shoulders only, or is it your shoulders and your hips, I guess is my question.
Great question. It really is all of them. Sally Swift used to tell people, put eyes on your chest. Well, the men had too much fun with that. Somewhere there's a sweatshirt floating around centered riding that has two eyes strategically painted on the chest. But we put the eyes on the front of the shoulders. Spoiled all their fun. So you have the eyes in your face and the eyes on the front of your shoulders. You can also imagine that you have a pair of eyes on the front of your hips. All 6 eyes should turn together. And very often I find good jumping riders will cut their head around sharply to one side while their body's facing straight. And they really need to let the whole body turn. Or some people will turn their shoulders, but their hips are facing straight. So getting kind of a severe twist in the middle. Mm-hmm. And you do have to remember, you can't turn your hips all that far because your legs are straddling around a horse's barrel. So your shoulders and your eyes in your face all turn just about as much as your hips. And that the 6 eyes is a good image to keep it coordinated. But this can make a huge difference to your horse's balance. And when he is standing up, in order to stand up through a turn, he has to bring his inside hind leg a little farther forward and under his belly. Mm-hmm. He also has to keep his center in the center, and he will look slightly in the direction of the turn. And those are the elements of bending. And it comes from bending equals standing up, and standing up equals bending.
As opposed to motorcycling.
Yeah, oh yeah. That horse was shying.
Okay, that's what you mean by standing up?
Motorcycling. Right.
Instructors use the concept of putting more weight on like the inside seat bone and stuff, but it's different than turning your horse's body with the movement, the hip. It's a whole different movement, right, Susan? You've heard that.
I think we have to be careful about putting more weight on the inside seat bone. It does happen. But I think most people, when they think about it, actually overdo it.
Yes.
And if you put even a little too much weight on the inside seat bone, it'll make you tip. It'll make one side of your body collapse. And it actually makes it harder for the horse to bring his inside hind leg up under him.
Exactly.
So when you rotate your seat bones, when you rotate your center, Remember, the human spine can rotate and the pelvis can rotate. We're just not rotating very far. But when you rotate instead of tilting, you'll feel a difference in your seat bones. And you'll probably feel like you have, if you had 1,000 grains of sand in your body or 1,000 beans in your body, you'll have a few more beans in your inside seat bone, but it won't be hundreds. It'll be 5 or 10.
Okay. Wow, that was really good.
Yes, so many great exercises. I know those of you who are watching and those of you who are, oh, here comes another comment, those who will be watching the replay. Again, these exercises are the exercises that'll take you to the next level of riding or whatever you're teaching your students. This is amazing that we have people like Susan Harris that are willing to take their time and share their best training exercises with all of you.
Karen does have a comment here. She says, I get a kick out of this. The 6 eyes is great. I've been smuggling with collapsing, and I'm thinking that should be struggling, but I like smuggling. Thank you, Karen.
Collapsing, they'll catch you.
Right.
Yeah. But I like the 6 eyes, and that's one way of getting everything coordinated. And I think the other thing to remember is less is more. Very often when we hear something new, we go out and we try it. And it's okay the first time you try it if you overdo it a little bit. But if you keep riding overdoing, you're going to wind up with consequences you don't know you have. So always, once you've learned a technique, say, what if I did it half that much? And horses are so much more sensitive than we realized. I hope you've read that wonderful book about the horse brain, human brain. But they talk about, in that book, she talks so much about how much horses can feel. So if you've learned a technique, try cutting it in half. Maybe even try cutting that much in half. And you may suddenly discover that your horse says, oh yeah, that I can understand. Because we humans are just naturally overdoers.
Yes, we are.
Now, did you want to talk about something else, Randy? You mentioned something about your course.
Yes.
Do we have to?
Oh, yeah.
Susan Harris and I are creating a course that's designed especially for those who are teaching riders or those who want to train themselves at other levels. And we're playing around with the title right now, but the title that we're calling it right now will basically be Teaching and Training Through the Back and on the aids. And it's going to be a 4-week course that we're going to be providing that you can use to make a difference, as I said, to take your riders so they understand what it means to get a horse on the aids and connected, or yourself. Would you like to add something on that topic too, Susan?
Well, I think if you're interested, you can always contact us through the Dressage Instructor Network. And if you're saying, oh, I hope you'll cover this, please let us know and we'll try to make sure we cover it. And of course, people will have a chance to ask questions and interact in this too. So what we're hoping is people will listen to the first one as many times as they want, go out and try it and bring us back some feedback. And then we're going to try to do this in a step-by-step way that makes sense so that by the time you get to the last one, you feel like you've made some progress with your horse, or if you're an instructor, with your student and your student's horse.
And we'll start with a free introductory program where we'll introduce you to the concepts and what we'll be bringing into the other topics that we'll be doing. But it'll be another free show where you can have the opportunity to discover the secrets that'll make a difference in everything what you're doing with horses. It'll be a lot of fun. Go ahead, Laura.
Will there be illustrations and diagrams like what you've shown today?
Oh, yes.
That's the only way I can teach, so there'll be a lot of pictures.
We'll also have a private Facebook group where everybody who becomes a part of the process, who joins in on the actual program itself, will have a private Facebook group where you can go and interact with each other and share what you're learning as you go through each of the steps of progression that we share with you.
Excellent. That sounds like a great program. It's going to be 4 weeks, is one session per week type thing?
Yes, it'll be an introductory session, and that's going to be the free program that we're going to do for everybody, where we will be sharing valuable techniques that you can use right away. And then after that, we'll start a 4-part paid course, which will be for those who want to go to the next level of their success.
And they can find more information by contacting you via your Facebook / dressage instructors.
They can do that, or as I said, we will be doing a live show. The first one will be live so that everybody can see what we're doing and they'll get a general idea of how Susan and I can make a difference in what you're doing as either a professional in the horse industry or as a rider that wants to take your riding to the next level.
There we go. Ginger says, count me in. Excellent. Thank you, Ginger.
Oh, great. We'll be glad to have you.
Yes.
We're hoping to launch this sometime in January, probably more near the end of January than the beginning, but we're looking at probably January.
Yes. It'll be exciting. And of course, as you know, we're going to try to get Susan on these shows as often as we can. We've had her on Jumping Instructors Network. We've had her on Dressage Instructors Network, because wherever she goes, she changes the lives of people and horses. And we're so proud that she's become a part of our process. Thank you so much, Susan and Laura. As I told you before, I would not be able to have the success we've had with these series if you weren't helping me with the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Love it. I mean, and like you say, you've been in horses for ever, and you meet somebody and there's just one little tweak, the way something's been said or the way that it's been explained, it just kind of opens up a whole new avenue of the way things are shared or the way you can teach people. Sarah says, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Together we make a difference for each other. Thank you, everybody who showed up for the program tonight. And remember, you can like and love these comments, share the comment love with us. And for those who aren't listening to us live, listen to the replays. You can still add comments because we'll be watching the main post to see if you have other comments or thoughts that you'd like to share with us, and we will be responding to them. Thank you for joining us tonight. We will look forward to seeing you the next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.